Hey friends, welcome to my channel, Life with Everyday Haley, where we talk about just a little bit of everything under the sun in my life. And as you're aware, part of my journey right now is wanting to become a mom. My husband and I are wanting to become parents, and the update I have is not great, but it's not terrible. I'm dealing with my emotions on it, but it's something that happened actually several months ago that I've just felt comfortable sharing. So I thought I would share it with you guys today. I'm sharing this for education, for community, and I've seen a lot of YouTubers sharing their story. It's really given me comfort, something I can relate to. So that's my purpose here. So let's talk a little bit about what I just went through in a very short video. So we started trying in July of 2023, and I had come off of birth control. I've been on it for 10 years, so that adjustment was rough. That could play into what happened to me. I'm not sure, but I just had a big adjustment period, and it's not until recently that my cycles have been more normal or consistent and not so painful. So I've got several videos about that I have posted and the transition, and I do feel better now. I am now I'd say 6+ months from coming off birth control, and it really does take time to readjust your body. I will say that since I came off of that, I have ovulated almost every month. There was one month that I did not ovulate. I couldn't find it when I tracked. And I'll share in a minute why that might have been. But I've been very consistent. I have not missed any periods, and I'm ovulating the same day each month. Periods are consistent on length. So, yeah, from that perspective, I am doing great. So in July, we started tracking our ovulation. I did not get pregnant in July. That was the first month that we actually started trying and tracking my ovulation. And it did not happen that month, but that's okay because we know that with cycles, you have a 30% chance every month. And then after that, it's, you just kind of have to see what happens. 30% is not the best chance, even when you're tracking and timing your intercourse. So August cycle came around. August was our second month of trying to get pregnant where things really shifted for me. And I'll say that things just took a turn for the worst, but I realized that when you're trying to get pregnant, things can happen. And this is just part of the journey. In August, I will say that we did time our intercourse more efficiently. Like I got better with learning how to track ovulation. I am using the Pre-Mom strips, and those are just fabulous. Makes it very easy with the app. So I do recommend that for you. And I just track everything. I track symptoms, ovulation, period. I'm tracking it all to try to be consistent. And it is helping me even to relay information to my doctor. So in August, we did have intercourse several days leading up to ovulation, the day of ovulation, and then actually a couple days after. And if you know, it's a wild time. You really are trying. And actually it did work that month and I did get pregnant. Unfortunately, I did have an early pregnancy loss. This is something that I've had to process over the past few months. As you can tell, it is Christmas time now, so I've had a few months to process. Also, I will say that a loss is not a quick thing. It took me several months to process through that physically and emotionally, and I'm still going through it. And there's waves of grief. If you have had a pregnancy loss or gone through something like this is a trigger warning for this video. And I did want to share that I am actively seeing my therapist that I have loved for years and seen consistently for over 3 years now. And she has been a great support for me, as well as my faith in the Lord, my prayer journey, and our prayer life as a couple. So I do want to share that I have a very strong support system with family, church, and a therapist. So I definitely recommend that you speak to someone if you're struggling with these feelings and emotions that come and the grief that comes from a pregnancy loss when you're trying. So trigger warning there. So this is what happened in August. I want to share this because it was a little different than I thought it would be. So first of all, I really didn't have any early pregnancy symptoms. I mean, I did. I was having like nausea after eating, and I just felt like after I would eat a meal, sometimes I would, especially dinner for some reason, I would just feel like I was gonna pass out. And I was specifically at an event, and I just felt like I was gonna pass out after I ate. And I almost told my friend beside me, "Hey, like something's wrong," but it passed weirdly. So that happened like 2 or 3 times. So I don't know if that was early pregnancy or not. And then my breasts became really tender around the time of my cycle, like expected cycle. Other than that, those were the real only two pregnancy symptoms. I will say this: in August, I started cramping really bad, like over a week before my period was due, like really bad, to the point where I called my doctor and said, I need to see you. I'm really struggling adjusting off of the pill. Something's just not right. And I thought my hormones were out of whack. Well, it turns out my hormones were definitely out of whack. I was actually pregnant. Now, I'm thinking that something went wrong early, as to why I was cramping so bad. And what happened was I cramped for about a week and a half. I didn't test because I try to wait until I get my cycle. And just be like strong in that, because it's a psychological game if you test prior. And I actually, my cycle was 3 days late. So that was a sign that something wasn't right. But again, I was transitioning from BC. So I thought, well, who knows? This could just be like, my body's crazy. And I did end up bleeding like 2 to 3 days of very, very light blood. And then the cramping went away. So then I thought, well, that was my weird cycle this month. So I'm not pregnant. It was my second month of trying. So I was really new to all of this. And I was like, well, oh, well, it didn't work this month. And I was sad, of course. But I just kept going. Side note, I am tracking my body temperature as well. And I track that to trend for ovulation to show that, yes, I did ovulate and I take the strips. And my BBT was super high in the 98s, even past my period. So that's another sign that like I was pregnant. Something weird was just going on. So the next week I was fine. I was feeling back to normal. Cramps were gone. But I started having nausea, like late night nausea, and just having a weird taste in my mouth. I started spotting as well. And I just felt off. And I talked with my mom, and she's like, you need to take a pregnancy test. And I'm like, well, Mom, like, there's no way that I am pregnant. Like, I just had a cycle. I've been cramping so bad. And she's like, something's just not right. So I took an ovulation test first, because it almost felt like ovulation cramping. And I thought, well, maybe I'm ovulating super early. Maybe something is wrong with my cycle. And the ovulation test was positive, like it was really high. So then I was like, well, wait a minute. I just had my period. I am not supposed to ovulate yet. I always ovulate on cycle day 15. I kind of know that since tracking that in July. And I don't know. So I took a pregnancy test by myself. I did not tell my husband, and it was positive. So this is, take in mind, this is a week after I had a short period bleeding. And I took a couple more positive. So I went and told my husband, something's going on. I have a positive pregnancy test. I realized that I haven't been feeling well, and I already had a little cycle, but this is the deal. So he's like, wow. So we took a few more, like more accurate tests, all positive. And so that was that. I was in shock. I didn't tell anybody. It was just the two of us that knew, and we knew something may be wrong. So we didn't get excited. None of it added up. So, yeah, I started spotting. The next day I was feeling a little better. And then all of a sudden, everything just went downhill. So this is trigger warning. And I'm still confused because the timing of everything just confuses me. So if you're watching this and you have this answer, like, fill me in. I didn't really go into detail with my doctor. She just basically said, this is what we think happened to you. So I wasn't having like fever or sharp pains or anything. My first thought was like, hopefully I won't have an ectopic pregnancy, because I have a genetic disorder that can be prone to that. So that's always in the back of my mind. So that day I went to a friend's house for lunch. I was feeling off. I was feeling a little faint and crampy, but not bad. And then around midday, I started having intense cramping, and I got like a huge gush of blood. Like I was like flowing like a waterfall, and that sounds terrible. I'm sorry. And I went to the bathroom, and it was everywhere. I'll never forget that. Like, it was everywhere. And I had obviously passed something. It's just clotting. I'll say that for the sake of sensitivity. And I'm really glad at the moment that happened. I didn't really know what was happening. I think if I had known what was happening to me and been cautious, aware of it, I would have been really upset. So at this point, we knew that I was pregnant. We knew that I was having a lot of physical symptoms and bleeding a lot. So what I did was I called my doctor, as I recommend anyone do. I almost contemplated going to the ER, but I was like, I'm not in that much pain. You know, I have a pretty high pain tolerance with my health situation. So called the doctor. They got right back with me. It was like a nurse coordinator got right back with me. The doctor basically said, the nurse said, if you're bleeding too much, go to the ER. You know, if you're having sharp pains, they talked with me about ectopic pregnancy symptoms. Wasn't having any of those. And they were like, let's get you in for some blood work. Let's just see what's going on. So went in for blood work. They got it back to me the very night. So that was really helpful, really reassuring. So my blood work was positive for pregnancy, HCG 81. So that's, you can see, a little low. However, that is in the range of the time frame that I was technically supposed to be. So when I started bleeding, which is weird because I had my little cycle, so I don't really know how to calculate this, but when I started bleeding, I was technically 6 weeks from my previous monthly period, if you don't count that little 2-day bleeding, whatever that was. If you count the 2-day bleeding as like when your miscarriage started, then that was a week before. So I would have been like 5, I don't know how it's all calculated, but 4 or 5 weeks. But I was 3 weeks from ovulation when all the bleeding came. So my HCG was 81, and I've looked up like the, you know, scales, and I mean, honestly, that wasn't terrible. I would hope it would be higher at that point. But who knows when it started dropping? Who knows? I don't know what was going on, honestly. And so they were like, okay, it's 81. You're definitely pregnant. Let's call you in 2 days later for more blood work. So I continued to bleed very heavily and cramp very badly. So I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be good news. I mean, it was basically like another period, a full, and it was a lot heavier than a normal period with a lot of cramping. And so they took me in 2 days later, and my HCG level was 61. So then they're like, you know, we're suspecting that you're having a miscarriage. And so they're like, we need to track this until it gets back down to 0. So that's what they did. I came back in a week later from that date, and it was back down to 0. So yeah, I'm not sure how high my HCG actually got. I'm not sure when it started dropping, but the day that I started bleeding really bad, it was 81. What that tells me is basically they couldn't do an ultrasound. They said that 81 was way too low to see anything. It would have to be in the thousands, you know, to be able to pick that up. They're like, you know, it's decreasing, so we're not worried that you're at risk for an ectopic pregnancy. I really didn't face with the symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy. Sometimes an ectopic pregnancy, like, it actually continues to grow, and then what you experience is like intense pain when it gets too big and ruptures. So with my genetic past, which you can watch in previous videos, it's possible that it was in my tube. It's possible that my egg fertilized in the wrong location, like my tube. That is something that can happen with patients like me. However, I mean, I choose to believe that hopefully it was real. However, I did have a lot of cramping, so I'm just not sure. I'm feeling a lot of emotions with that. Like, was it a real pregnancy and something just didn't take right? Or was it in my tube? I don't know. And that's something that I just have to kind of process as I move forward. So that was in August. And the doctor that was in September is when this happened. It was from my August cycle that I got pregnant. So this happened around September 15th. I ovulated around August 18th, I think, and this happened September 15th. And they basically wanted me to wait a cycle. First of all, I had to let my HCG levels drop, then wait a whole cycle, not try again, and then let my period come back. So during that month of October, I believe, my period didn't come back until like 6 weeks. So to me, that's a sign that like maybe I did actually have a miscarriage. And I know I had a miscarriage, but maybe it was like, you know, more serious than I had thought. Like, because I know with chemical pregnancy, it's anything under, I think, 5 weeks is a chemical pregnancy. But for me, I feel like my symptoms were a little different than a typical chemical pregnancy. I don't know. I'm not a physician. But it was intense. It kind of mimicked to me more of a miscarriage with everything that I went through. I had to wait. It took 6 weeks for it to come back. And I did not find an ovulation peak in that month. I still tracked it because I wanted to know if I was ovulating again. And I didn't find one. So I don't know if you can technically have a cycle again and not if you haven't ovulated. I'm not real sure. But that's what happened to me. And then things got back to normal in my November cycle. My doctor and I had a nice long talk, and she wanted me to do an HSG test just to examine my tubes and make sure everything was okay in my uterus because of the genetic condition that I have. So I went in and did that on my November cycle. And I did that, like, you have to do that certain time of your cycle. So I did that on cycle day 10, I believe. And that was a painful experience. There's a whole nother video on my channel about that. But my results from that were great, that my tubes are open, everything looks normal in my uterus. And so if there happened to be anything in my tube, it's not there. Like, that test confirmed that. So anyways, that was a lot of like trauma to my body in a short period of time. I was able to try again in November, and I was encouraged, my doctor encouraged me to do so because fertility can be improved after that happens. However, I did not get pregnant in November. We did not have as much time to track and plan because we had vacation, all kinds of things. So I kind of think, well, maybe, you know, my body was just healing, and, you know, you don't get pregnant every month anyway. So when I got my cycle in November, I was really upset. That really hit me. I was like, I did not get pregnant again. Like, what's wrong? Like, that hurt me, and I've had to process those feelings, and I have had to seek therapy help with that with my great therapist. So I'm still processing that. Anyways, that's an update. Is it positive? No. Have I learned a lot? Yes. Am I trying to see the positive in it? Yes. I was able to conceive. That gives me peace. And hopefully I can carry a positive, viable, natural pregnancy. As we know, that's kind of the question for me with my genetic condition. It can go either way. I'm choosing to stay positive with it and pray that God allows me to conceive and have a viable pregnancy. So we are now in December. You can see my special decorations. And we are still trying. We are ready to try. And we'll see what happens, and I'll keep you updated. I will say this, my cycle in November had less cramping, and it was more consistent bleeding, and it just felt better, and it felt more normal. So maybe it did just, my body needed time to adjust from that birth control. I'm not sure, but I'm feeling like things are settling. So that's my update. I am going to post a video soon about processing grief through a pregnancy loss. And just all of the phases and waves that you go through, because that's, to me, is valuable to relate to each other on. So tune into that. So this is my update. As you can tell, I have had time to process. It does hurt, but it's the reality, and we have to move forward. So I hope this video helps you if you're going through something like me. If anything similar has happened to you, please comment so we can chat about it, because I'm learning as I go. But thanks for tuning into my channel, and would love for you to follow along and subscribe to my journey. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to watch. But I hope you have a great day.